I am the creator of Move. I'm the first person to join the Libra project and be given the assignment of, hey, Libra is going to have smart contracts. It's important to have safe programmability on the blockchain, like figure out what to do with that. Someone pulled me into a room and pitched me, and like I knew right away, hey, here's this big effort that Facebook is doing. It's very ambitious. We have this mission of financial inclusion that I immediately identified with. They brought me in as the programming languages expert, and this was sort of my road into blockchain. I spent a number of years at Facebook looking at code. And so I developed a lot of opinions about software safety, about programming language design, seeing where programming languages set programmers up for failure and where it helped them. The most scarce resource in the world isn't time, and it's not money, but it's human brain power. And like a lot of what human brain power is being used to do is to build software. And so if you can magnify brain power, do more per unit time, then like that's one of the most impactful things that you can do. I did my homework in terms of looking at other options. And basically the decision to create a new language came from the fact that we didn't think any of these options was quite appropriate. There are some really essential tasks that a smart contract language needs to do that don't exist in conventional languages. And so that was a lot of the basis why we decided to do something new. The company started in November 2021, so definitely something I remember was hacking on Sui on Christmas Day and getting the first end-to-end transaction that was calling Move code going all the way through and working. We started off with just being able to do object transfers, which happened outside of Move, but that was the first time we had a Move call that worked all the way through. That was pretty cool. That was a huge milestone because, it's the first public distributed network running Sui. This is the first time where we can really establish that developer feedback loop because now we have a live network. People can publish code. People can use our CLI. They can use our SDKs. We can get feedback. You see someone doing something with the language that you hadn't thought about, or you see someone discovering it for the first time and saying like, this thing is really cool. At that point, I think it feels really good, and I feel a lot of pride to see like your life's work and sort of your intellectual baby taking on a life of its own and growing up a little bit.
I didn't know there was going to be a video, but you speak well.
Who's that guy front-running all my talking points? I mean,
well, I think I want to talk about, firstly, the first ever Sui Basecamp. Delighted to be here. But we should probably discuss how we actually got here in the first place. You started developing Move in 2018, Mysten Labs in Sui 2021, that kind of time. So how have things developed over that time period, and how did we get here?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some substantial evolution, I think, from the Facebook days to jumping out to start Mysten. I think there are two things that are really different that I would think of at first. So one is that the way we built software at Facebook, which I think is totally reasonable, is that you have dedicated teams and they agree on the interfaces with other teams, and then they iterate within the boundaries of their interface. So, you have the Move team, you have the storage team, you have the consensus team, and at the beginning they agree how these systems are going to talk, and then they sort of go off and do whatever they want, but they don't expose the internals. And when we jumped out to start Mysten, we're like, okay, we're going to open up the black box where we're actually not going to have these strict interface boundaries, but we'll really allow the components to understand what's going on inside of each other. And I think a lot of the things we're doing in Sui that are cool came from that. Like, it's like, okay, what if consensus knew about object ownership? That's where the Sui fast path comes from, for example. What if the scheduler knew about what objects a transaction was going to touch? That's where you get a lot of the parallelism and throughput features. So that's something we didn't do at Facebook that we did do when we jumped out to start Mysten that I think has led to a lot of new ideas and interesting things. And I think the other big one, of course, is that at Facebook we wrote a lot of smart contracts like compliant payments, but there weren't apps. We just had one app, which is compliant payments. And of course in Sui, it's a general purpose blockchain. It can do many, many different things. And so we have DeFi builders, we have games, we have NFTs, all of this stuff. And we have a tight feedback loop with the community, with developers. And that's really just pushed the boundaries of what we're trying to do with the language. So I think especially there, one big theme has been not just making Move a great language for smart contract developers, but for app developers in general. If you can use Move-powered APIs directly from the front end without having to write Move smart contract code, that we want to make that easy. That's where programmable transaction blocks come from. A lot of apps are going to read Move managed state, but not want to write new smart contracts themselves. That's what a lot of the things we're doing with the object data model and the GraphQL-powered RPC is doing. So I think those two things in general really have led to a lot of the changes and moves since the Facebook days, but it's really evolved. I mean, maybe more than I thought it would, and in ways that are unexpected, which has been exciting.
Fantastic. And what have been the core values that have informed the development of Move as a language?
Yeah, so there are three big ones that we like to talk about. So the first and I think most important one by far is safety by default. So for a smart contract language, like I basically think that the smart contract developer community today is small. It's like 20,000 people or so. And I think like it's so hard to write safe smart contracts in the languages of today that it's never going to grow that much bigger without better language safety. Like I think being a safe smart contract, writing safe smart contracts on Solidity of the EVM is like as hard as being a Linux kernel hacker or something like that. You can do it, but there's only so many people alive who can really do that well. And so you're just never going to get like iOS-sized developer community like 9 million people, or JavaScript like 16 million people. You really need ironclad safety guarantees that you can't work around. So that's the most important value of Move by far. Like anything that you do, it's gonna be safe. If there's two ways to do something, we'll pick the safer way. Okay. And whenever we evolve the language, we're going to evolve it in a way that either makes it safer than it was before, or at least preserves the existing safety properties. The second value we talk about a lot is expressive by nature. Okay. And so with that, it's like smart contracts are in a new and evolving discipline. We don't know what people are going to want to do. Whenever they can imagine, they should be able to do that with Move. So we think a lot about providing the features that they need to do that, but doing it with powerful and opinionated primitives instead of just like, oh, we'll like add the kitchen sink of features, or like, oh, we'll do X because another language does it. We don't do it that way. We're like, okay, when someone asks for X, like, what do they really need? Like, what's behind that desire? And then, like, is it something that we can do today? Are we happy with how you can do it? Or does it really need a net new feature? And then the third one is intuitive for all. And so for that, it sort of gets at what I was speaking at earlier. Like both, we want that if you're a Web 2 programmer, it should be easy to pick this up. If you want to call Move from existing code without writing new Move, that should be easy. If you're reading Move managed state, that should be easy. And if you're coming from the EVM or another smart contract language, we want that to be convenient as well. So smart contracts are this odd and idiosyncratic thing. So we really want to think about, okay, what are the core abstractions, make those easy to pick up, and just not have the language be too big. Minimalism is a big part of Move. So I think those are the values that have really, that we built the language around and that we've evolved it according to. And these things are hard. Like with the language, I think the tendency is just keep adding new features, keep doing new things, like let it grow until it collapses under its own weight. Sure. And so you really have to fight hard to make sure that you're keeping up with needs, but also like not letting something become too large and unwieldy. So I think we've done a good job of that, but these things become harder and harder over time. Sure,
and that makes a lot of sense. As I was walking around the conference this morning, I couldn't help feel a little bit bullish. What a fantastic conference we have here. But I was wondering how Sui could enable developers to take advantage of this current bull run.
Yeah, so I'll tell a story to start with that one, where I was at ETH Denver last month and I was meeting with a bunch of Sui builders, especially Sui DeFi builders. And I was talking to someone who was giving me a lot of good feedback about things that we could do better in Sui. And, I was listening to this feedback about, you could do this, we could do that, we'd like to add this. And then at the end, he said, in spite of all this stuff that could improve, like Sui is the best chain for trading. And I think that's really true. And that's for a variety of reasons. So I think one thing is that there are these features like programmable transaction blocks where it makes it really easy to glue together DeFi code from the front end without having to write new smart contracts and without having to conform to standards. That people are just really pushing the boundaries of interesting things you can do, like this dynamic gas feature where it's like, oh, use PTBs to like pay for a sponsored transaction with a different token. You look at things like dynamic fields and how people are using that to build multi-asset collateralized lending. And we just have this great stable of homegrown DeFi builders who started on Sui and have sort of like really figured out the Move and how to do their own thing. And then also folks coming from other chains who see something very specific that they want to do better. Maybe it's someone like Bluefin who starts on Arbitrum that's like, hey, we can get much better margins because we can, on Sui, like 20x better because we can do more trades. We can write code that's faster. Or expanding from Solana because like there's some performance characteristics or some developer experience ones that you want. So I think like what really I think developer experience is the biggest thing that we can do, but I think there's a bunch of these specific features like programmable transaction blocks and just the creativity of the DeFi builders in general. And then, of course, there's the metrics. I think there's more talks on this later, but, the volume, the TVL, the bridging stats, they speak for themselves. And this is all before we even have native stablecoins, which are sort of like a cornerstone of DeFi. So I think that'll be coming later. But I think all these things are going to make DeFi on Sui even greater than it is today.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a talk later on how you've managed to improve the speed and efficiency of Sui.
Yeah.
So Dimitri is giving that one, isn't it? That's later on today.
Yeah. So I don't want to steal Dimitri's thunder about Mysten, but yeah, definitely folks should come to that talk. We've been excited about this for a long time, and we've had some very promising benchmarking results, and we'll finally bring those out.
I won't say too much then. We'll keep under wraps. I know there's another big upgrade coming though to the compiler. What kind of difference is that going to make, and what will developers notice in terms of the changes there?
Yeah, so we call this Move 2024. It actually just dropped late last week, early this week. So you can, if you now grab the CLI, it'll be using Move 2024. You can do Sui Move Migrate to move your code over. There's a couple of headline features in Move 2024, and then some other ones that are coming in short order. So the biggest ones are there's method syntax. So, this isn't exactly rocket science, but it does definitely make your code a lot shorter and more ergonomic. So, instead of saying vector : pushback at mute v7, you now just say v.pushback7. And so it lets you chain together method calls and just really write your code in a more concise way. There's also a couple of other features that are coming soon. So we have enums. That's going to be both a bytecode code change and a compiler code change. That's going to be massive in terms of making it easier to upgrade code, making it cleaner to write these types that have multiple different options for what they could be.
Okay.
We're also working on we call this .move, where you can assign human readable names to Sui packages. So in your move.toml files, you'll be able to say, instead of I depend on OX72347, I depend on typus or some specific project name, and then you can also use those in the SDK and just generally make it more of an experience. It's like a language where an ordinary language like a Rust or a Java, where you're working with human readable strings and not with these weird hashes and package identifiers. So I mean, the TLDR, for folks who aren't devs, is you can write more code faster, and you can still do it just as safely. And so there's a bunch more features coming on that. There's also a new Move book that just dropped this morning, move-book.com, that has the Move 2024 features and is also focusing a lot of Sui stuff in the way we've never explained before.
So, and for people who aren't elite level coders, I believe you're bringing in some AI powered LLM type tools, so that'll make it easier for people who aren't at that level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of efforts in this area. I think LLM-powered tooling is very quickly becoming table stakes. If Copilot doesn't understand your language, probably developers aren't going to use it or aren't going to like it as much as something else. So there's a few things we're doing. So one is we're working with foundational model providers like Google, like Alibaba, to make sure that their coding-focused models understand Move well. Move is what the AI folks call a low resource language, which means there's not that much training data out there because it's pretty new. So you have to do special things to fine tune these models to make sure that they understand Move and understand Sui concepts really well. And so that's one thing that we're doing. And so when they improve the foundation models, when you ask questions about Move in Sui, they understand it better. And if you're using a Google or Alibaba powered IDE, then it'll just support Move better than other things. There's also some folks in the community who are doing some interesting stuff. So the Bucket folks are working on Sui GPT, which is a VS Code plugin that's using LLMs that understand Move really well, so it can explain your code. They're doing some interesting stuff with a better decompilation using LLMs. That's quite an interesting project that people should definitely check out. And Mysten folks are working on LLM-powered auditing. There's this bug dart project that maybe Kostas will talk about tomorrow. If not, you should ask him about it in person. But it runs in CI and can help you find security issues in your code. It understands Sui really well. It understands Move really well, and I think it'll just reduce the scope of audits and help folks find stuff earlier. And then those are the shorter term things. But I'm really excited about this project that we call Move to App Compiler.
Okay. Where
the idea is you have a Move package, and that it's not a lot of code, but it conveys a lot of intent. And if you're a Sui developer and and you've written a couple apps and you see a Move package, you can kind of understand like, oh, this is what the app around it is going to look like. It'll have this back-end logic. It would have these front-end bindings. And so what the idea of Move to App Compiler is, well, we want to generate all that stuff for you. So some of this is old school deterministic code gen. We'll generate TypeScript bindings for you. We'll generate React views for visualizing your objects. Basically, like as soon as you write your Move code, you'll have an interactive app that you can play with for debugging purposes. It probably wouldn't be pretty enough to deploy, but it helps you get to the starting point quicker. Yes. And then on top of that, we plug in LLMs. So it's like, okay, now you have this sort of skeleton app that works, like how to use the LLMs, which understand TypeScript and React really well to write this thing into a production quality app. So we're making gradual progress on that, but that's one of the things I'm really, really excited about. It's like, all right, once you've written the Move code, you just go to a full-fledged app quite quickly, and it'll make it even easier for folks to get started and to get to production quickly.
Cool. I mean, when I interviewed you for Cointelegraph back in January, one of the things that had really impressed me was how much you really do care about developers and improving their experience of actually programming in the language. Is that something that has been informed by your own experiences?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd say this started for me in grad school where my PhD advisor was notorious. He would always say, you'd come to him with an idea and he'd be like, yeah, this is cool, but you need more examples. He was very like developer empathy and examples driven, where he's like, we can't just solve a cool theoretical problem. Like we have to solve a problem that's real and that's important. And so you'd have to have like lots and lots of examples of, we were building automated bug finding tools then, like real bugs, bugs that actually mattered and caused problems of consequence. And so I really took that to heart. And then as I did the same kind of work at Facebook, it was sort of the same thing, but at Facebook scale, really getting deep into developer empathy, figuring out like, okay, like here's the problem, but it's not just the problem. Like, what are the language features that led the developer to maybe not think about that or allowed them to write this sort of bad code in the first place?
What confused them?
Exactly. And so I've really taken that into Move, where it's, people talk about, like a developer tool or language like should get out of the programmer's way. I mean, I think that's one thing you could do. It definitely shouldn't get in their way. But I think like what you really want is, you want it to be a partner for thought. You want it to be a collaborator. And so, if you think about like if you're brainstorming with a friend on like where you should go on vacation or like a party you're planning or something, like think about like what you want that environment to be like you want it to be comfortable. You want to like the other person. You want to feel like they understand you. You want to feel like they're going to enhance your thoughts and your creativity. And I really think of programming languages and tools in that same kind of way. Like that's the sort of level we should be shooting for, not just getting out of your way, but actually being like an effective partner and collaborator that you really enjoy spending time with. So it sort of started in the grad school setting, but then like as I've gotten like from higher in the stack of automated bug finding to like down into the language design thing, it's really like how helpful we can be, how much can we mind meld with the programmer and enhance what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was not just developers, of course. You also spoke to me quite a bit about, ordinary users. It's quite, when you're in the blockchain space, you can quite often get into this mode where you're thinking blockchain, but you've got to be able to onboard people and help people who are maybe not quite so technically savvy.
Yeah, and this is something we think about a lot in Sui and especially in our technical roadmap. So, there's this saying that first-time founders think about technology and second-time founders think about distribution. And so we're first-time founders, but we've heard the adage, so we really try to take that to heart. And so distribution is like, who can use Sui, who can get access to a blockchain? If we can expand that makes it more appealing for developers, that makes it more impactful, that changes what you can build. And so initiatives like ZK Login, we're trying to knock down the wallet install barrier. There's like 60 million people worldwide who have installed a wallet, and that's not growing very fast and probably won't. So, who wants to build for that small and idiosyncratic audience? Some people, but not so many. Whereas with ZK Login, okay, now you can use Sui from a Google account. You can use it from an Apple account. That instantly opens up the door to hundreds of millions or billions of people, not just this small wallet install base. Similarly, like we're adding Passkey-based authentication. Okay, so now you can have a private key on your phone. You can use like the authentication technology that exists elsewhere. Sponsored transactions too. Okay, don't want to go to Coinbase and get crypto to get started using some app. What if I don't know what Coinbase is? I just want to do something cool. And so we can take that out of the way by allowing the app to sponsor transactions for you. So, I mean, distribution is a product problem and an ecosystem problem, but whenever we can make it a technical problem and at least solve part of that via native platform features, that's something we try to do.
Yeah, I just recently set up a Sui wallet, and I think it's one of the easiest processes I've ever had. setting up a wallet for crypto. So good job on that front.
Oh, we appreciate the kind words. The mobile wallet just rolled out on Android. Hopefully, it'll be on iOS soon. There's a number of really great ecosystem wallets as well as a few new ones that are onboarding.
Okay, doke. That's pretty much all the stuff directly about Move and Sui. I just wanted to sort of finish up with a question that's a little bit different. We're in the 2024 US presidential election. Who's going to be better for crypto? Another Biden term or the return of Trump?
These are dangerous questions, Robert. So, I'll give you an answer that's based on a narrow category, not based on a broad political opinion. But the Biden administration recently released this really excellent press release and tech paper on memory safety in languages that, I read it and it was super well done and also sounded to me like the things I tended to rant about at cocktail parties in grad school and get in trouble with my partners and friends about. But just saying this lack of memory safety is a cancer that's causing a lot of software safety issues that's holding things back. We really need to use memory safe languages like Rest, which of course we love in Sui. And then Move has very much been inspired by, as I mentioned, safe by default, this tradition of take these problems off the table, take these safety problems off the table and push the industry forward that way. And the report also cited some Stanford collaborators that we've worked with Move on. And so, I'll choose that. I'll use that to say I would like more administrations that have more thinking like that, more tech forward and seeing hey, we're not just talking about things at a shallow level, but seeing what can technology do? What are the big picture problems that it can solve, and focusing on that rather than on the short-term issues that something causes as it's growing.
Cool. I'll resist the urge to ask you who you're voting for. Okay. Right. I don't know if there's any final thoughts you want to share with the audience before we wrap up.
I don't think so. I mean, thanks so much for coming. It's overwhelming and wonderful for me to be here with the entire Sui community, our first global conference, but certainly not the last one.
Well, yeah, hopefully we'll be back next year.
Definitely. If not Paris, then somewhere else. Thank you.